Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've got something I think is important today, and I've got some notes down here. I'll try and talk sort of darting back and forth from the notes, and we'll see how we go. I want to pose the question. I've titled this talk today, Is Photography Supernatural? Wow, that sounds like a bit of hocus pocus, doesn't it? Most people say it's not supernatural, it's science. Of course it's science. I know it's science. But I'm trying to go a bit further than that, look beyond that, um, to pose the question whether photography is supernatural, whether its sources, its origins are supernatural. There you go. So just imagine what it was like when the first pioneers in photography first started discovering what they could do in the darkroom and how they could bring an image on their antiquated equipment that they had and how good it was. In some cases, in my opinion, better than what we do today. But just imagine the magic that was appearing before them in the wet darkroom as that image is coming into fruition, just gradually coming out of the gloom in the water or in the developer or whatever you call it. I'm not schooled in doing photography in a darkroom. But people like Darius Kinsey, he's one of my favourite photographer guys. I've talked about him before on my YouTube channel and my blog before, I think. Darius and Tabitha Kinsey were pioneers of photography back in America a couple of 100 years ago, and they did some amazing work. And here's a self-portrait of Darius. There, like that. You see that there? Hang on a second. There you go. There he is. They had these huge big cameras, and he used to go into all the forests in New York State, I think it was, the logging forests, and take photographs there. Some amazing photographs in this book. Look him up on the internet, Darius Kinsey and his wife Tabitha. He's got he was very commercial. He was very good at promoting his business. He used to sell photos to all the people that worked in the logging camps. Our one desire is to please. If you are pleased, tell your friends. If you are not, tell Kinsey. Cedro Woolley, Washington. There you go. Washington State, I think it was he was in. So, and some of his shots of this is if you look at this on here, maybe you can see that these are the sort of shots he used to take in the forests where they were doing all the logging. And the amazing thing is the detail in those shots, because they were using glass plates and all that sort of stuff, is probably better than our digital definition that we get these days. So it was a pretty magical thing when people first started discovering photography, and there is a science behind it. And but is it magical? Is photography supernatural? So let's talk about how I sort of come to this conclusion in looking at the what photographers and any proper photographer knows what I'm talking about is the Holy Trinity of photography. What is that? What springs to your mind? Well, it's how ISO and aperture and shutter speed work together to give you the picture that you want. Now, if you're a photographer, you know how to work those three elements of light and photography and cameras and optics to bring about the best picture, the one that you want to create, not just one that your camera just comes up and when you've got the camera set on P, not one that it comes up with, but you can override that. But even so, that P setting on your camera is still putting into practice this what we call the Holy Trinity of photography. And I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute. And I don't understand science behind photography. I read about it. I know what all the words say. But I say to myself, I don't really understand it. I go back further than just the scientific laws that govern it. But where do those laws come from? How did light come into being? Did it evolve, or was it just there? And why are there laws that mean that we can find out what those laws are and then create amazing photography? Where did it all come from? Is it supernatural? Well, maybe. So anyway, that's one of the questions, the Holy Trinity of photography. I'll put some links underneath here where I've talked about this before, about how you make a good picture out of using those three things. The ISO, which is the amount of light that is let into the camera. The shutter speed, so you can freeze or blur action, and the aperture, so you can actually have a big depth of field or a short depth of field. So you can have nice soft images in the background of a portrait like this. If you were doing a soft image, if I wanted to blur the background here, I'd be taking my shot of me at about f1.8, and then the rest of it might be blurry in the background. Whereas at the moment, this automatic camera on my iPhone is just giving you as much detail as you like. It's not blurring out the back. But the other interesting thing is that these are cameras. This is photography. But did you realize that when you are a walking camera? This is your camera, and these are your lenses. And what's going on in here is working out all this Holy Trinity stuff, this Trinity of photography stuff, to give you the image that you want. If I just concentrate on looking at this image here on the phone in front of me, I can tell that in the background there's a photograph or a picture up on the wall there, and it's out of focus. If I were to look at it, well, then that goes in focus, and this is not in focus. And I can't see two things at once. But unless I'm pretty clever. So our bodies are designed to put into practice photography. We are a walking camera. And this camera in here is automatically adjusting everything to what we need, using the laws of photography, the laws of light. They're scientific laws, but where do they come from? That's a good question, isn't it? Here's where I start getting into some Christian jargon, if you like. Some of you who are Christian might understand what I'm talking about. Some of you won't, but I'm trying to sow some seeds of thought. In the Bible, and I'm going to come up with this here, just bear with me for a second. I did have it here before. Let's have a look. Here it is. I'm just going to probably share the screen, or no, I won't share the screen. You can still see me there. I'm just going to read here. This is I first discovered some of this truth in the Bible when I was reading some books on Christianity and the Bible by a man called what's his name? He's up there somewhere. Sidlow Baxter. Yeah, he was an amazing theologian, and he started talking about some of the things I'm talking about now, particularly about this passage that we've got here. So I'm going to share some of that with you, and then I'm going to come back to a few more things about trinities. Okay, so in the Bible, it says in James, you can look this up, James chapter 1, verse 17, it says, where is it? I'll find it for you. This is James 1:17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Sidlow Baxter talks about the shadow of turning in his book, and he's talking about how the constancy of God, and how, because people in the early days, before we had clocks, they understood the shadow of turning, and they used it to make sundials so they could tell the time. But that's another subject. So let's just, I'm just quoting off of some stuff I found on the internet. If you put in the question, what does it mean that there is no shadow of turning with God? This will come up as an answer. And I'm just going to read some of this, and then I'll come back to it in a minute. I hope you're still with me. The Bible clearly expresses the immutability of God, his unchanging, consistent nature in numerous passages. James communicates it like this, and I just read this out. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. With unique expressions such as the Father of lights and no shadow of turning, James focuses on God's creative power over the heavens and the earth. And you can look up passages in Genesis 1:14-18, Job 38:4-15. There's lots of science in the book of Job. If you read that, there's some amazing things in there. And verse 38, 19-21, 31-33, Psalm 163, 4-9, and Jeremiah 31-35. I'm not quite sure what all of them. So I know what some of the things that are in Job talking about, because there's a discussion between Job and God is pointing out all the things that he has created and telling Job, well, what would you know of these things? Could you do that? And it's a wonderful study in science, in creation that God created for us. Okay, these phrases are astronomical references to the variations of light intensity and the shadows cast by the sun, moon, planets, and stars. The celestial bodies constantly move, revolving in space, casting shadows of turning as the light they produce shifts, fluctuates, and is eclipsed. Each day as the sun rises in the east, it casts long westerly shadows. At the sun's full midday peak, the shadows disappear and then begin to turn toward the east as the direction of light pivots. At night, the shadows are deepest, but still the turning and shifting with the moon's phases. The shadow of turning may also refer to the variations of light and shadow caused by the changing seasons as the earth turns on its axis and the sun's distance and directions alter. Every photographer that knows his stuff will tell you that there are different times of the day and light has different color temperatures, and you need to know how to set filters and how to adjust your camera to deal with the light that you get changing before you. And a lot of the times, of course, we'll say that the best light of the day is just before sunset or just after sunset, and just in the morning, just before sunrise. And these are the golden light, particularly late in the afternoon, is very popular with photographers. And I used to love that when I was photographing weddings. I was waiting for the golden light so I could take beautiful photos of the bride and the groom, particularly the bride with the light shining through her hair, backlit by the sun. Anyway, so that's just some thoughts about that. Where does all this come from? Why is that science there in the first place? Did it just evolve? I don't think so. You can't tell me that the sun was fighting survival of the fittest to improve on its conditions of all these lights. It's all tells you right there. It's unchanging, consistent, the consistency of God. Okay, so, and if you're a Christian, and there are some people who think they're Christians or claim to be Christians, but they have different views on this. But if you're a Christian, you understand the Holy Trinity, which is in the Bible. Now, you won't find the words the Holy Trinity anywhere in the Bible, in the Old or the New Testament, but you can find that in the Bible there are all sorts of different passages that confirm that God is a God in he's a one God, but he's a God in three persons, and each part of the three persons all has a different function for us. And we are told in the Bible, and I'll put the quote in afterwards where it says that we are made in the image of God. Now, the image of God, in my opinion, and it's also in the Bible's opinion, is that we are made in the image of God because God is in three parts and is a whole. We are in three parts and we are a whole. We are body, soul, and spirit. If you get hold of a book like this one here, here is it, The Handbook to Happiness by Charles Solomon, A Guide to Victorious Living and Effective Counselling. And this is with these people, what do they call themselves? I can't remember now. I'll tell you afterwards. Grace Fellowship International, that's who they are. But there's a lot of, in my early Christian years, I read a lot of this and learnt all of this to use in my counselling with people. And there you have a chart. I'll bring that up a bit closer there, and the Bible clearly points this out, that we are, and some will dispute it, but it quite clearly points it out if you do a real search, that we are body, soul, and spirit. And that shows you how the different parts of our body relate to each other, and how the different parts, the body, I'll just read here, that the body is our physiological part, and that's where we have our world consciousness, and it relates to our environment. And the spirit is it's where our intuition, our conscience, our communion relates to God, goes up that way, but it also goes this way to our soul. And there's an exchange between our psychological and our spiritual, our self-consciousness in one side on the soul and our God consciousness on the spirit side. And then there's interaction between the body and the soul. You've all heard about psychosomatic illnesses. Well, a lot of that is because of these interactions can be out of kilter. And for us to be a whole person, which is what these guys teach, you have to learn how to have the exchange life. You put on Christ, and you exchange your life for the life of Jesus living in you. See, that's getting a bit highfalutin probably for some, but however, that's what true Christianity is about. So now I'm just getting back to the fact that these laws are there. I don't fully understand I don't fully understand how God works. I don't fully understand how Jesus can die on the cross and that forgives me my sins and I can go to heaven. I don't understand the mechanics or even the science of that. It's a God thing. It's a faith thing. But the evidence is there that Jesus' death and resurrection actually happened, and there were many people who actually saw this happen, and no one's ever disproved that. They all have conjecture about it. But so what I'm suggesting to you is that there is a Holy Trinity of photography. The Bible, photography, in my opinion, has its origins as a supernatural value or creation that God has created. It's there all the way. Before the age of science, when people started discovering these things. Don't you love it? Don't you love it when your printer just gets a life of its own and decides to start rumbling and rolling around? Anyway, so I'm just trying to give you some food for thought. Okay, here I am. I turned that off. It would just keep rattling away. So I don't know why. Anyway, where was I? So I'm putting the proposition to you to think differently about the world, about your life, about your relationship to God, who has made you in his image. He's made me in his image. He's made all your family, everyone that's ever existed in his image of body, soul, and spirit. And for us to have what Charles Solomon talks about as the victorious life, where everything is in sync, and mind you, when you become a Christian, not everything becomes automatically happy and rosy straight away. It's a lifelong experience. But you can learn to put all the things of God into practice so that your life can be a lot happier, a lot more fulfilling. And not only that, you can know the surety of life after death, which is very important. I've been to one funeral last week. I'm going to another one this week. And when you go to a funeral, if you don't hear anything about God in that funeral, it's very sad because the people there have basically got no hope. Anyway, look, thanks for watching. Like if you like, subscribe if you wish. Tell me what you think. Is photography supernatural? Is it from God? Or is what I'm talking a lot of baloney? You might think that. But you're allowed to think what you like. We all have a free choice, don't we? All have a free will. So I'll see you next time. See you later.